All right, welcome everyone to the Pat and Mike Show. Here we are on Friday, 2 o'clock. This will be our regular time every week now to just kind of, Pat and I will get together and kind of just talk about things that happened during the week. Some, interesting situations that we've had when working with families that I feel like if we kind of just talk it through with our listeners that they can benefit from the information that we've had with the client experiences. You good with that?
Sure. Yeah, this whole thing has been a learning process for all of us as we kind of try to evolve with the changing laws and can you meet with people, what services, what technology, what can we do? And it's been great. I mean, both from a firm perspective and working with the clients, all the different ways that we've kind of figured out to keep the show rolling.
Yeah, we typically get together as a firm also to talk about strategy and everything. So now we just get to kind of do it without using anyone's names, obviously, but we get to sit here and do this just on camera. So we'll see how this goes. Couple reminders though. People have been taking advantage of the offer that we have going right now, the free healthcare powers of attorney, financial powers of attorney to all frontline responders. So if you know anyone who's still out there working while all the rest of us are at home, have them reach out. We'd be happy to accommodate their schedule to get some powers of attorney in place for them. Also, it seems like we might be extending the order. I don't think it's official yet, but Governor Whitmer did yesterday extend the state of emergency till the end of the month. So I don't know if we can read between the lines there, and we might be staying home a little bit longer than we expected. But as long as this goes on and our entire office is forced to work from home, we understand that everyone's dealing with financial struggles, and we're offering 50% off of all estate planning services, as this seems to be very top of mind to everyone as we're all at home, kind of thinking about the what ifs of what could happen if a loved one of ours got was infected with COVID-19.
Yeah, and I was going to say to that as well. We've currently got 4 offices. We're in Rochester, Bloomfield Hills, and Macomb on the east side of the state, and then over in Kalamazoo on the west side. But doing things virtually basically just means if you're anywhere in the state of Michigan, we can work together. We've had a number of clients and a number of families where when we're meeting just like this, and when you look at the address, you're like, oh my goodness, they're in Lansing, or there's someone who would never pop into our office for an appointment, but being able to do the planning online, mail out the plans, do virtual signing and notarizing is just it's been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, it was funny. I was just talking to Julie from our team earlier today about we need to change our messaging. Right now we talk about 4 convenient locations across Michigan to help out families, but truly, I mean, anywhere in Michigan, you're licensed in Illinois as well. I mean, pretty much, anywhere within those state borders, we're willing to and able to help people. So that's incredible. It's change. This is changing the legal climate and environment that we're all working in, and just how we're doing things is evolving every day.
Yeah, well, and there's a whole lot of areas in the state where people don't have convenient access to an attorney, because maybe they've got to drive an hour or so to get to the town where that is. But if they're willing to work with us this way, we can serve people from here to Traverse City up to Manistee, and anywhere in the state, which is really cool. Because before this, it was really hard for some of those people to get the work done that they needed done, or to establish an ongoing relationship with an attorney. So.
The thing about what you say there is it's my in-laws have a place up north, as many probably Michiganders do. It's a thing we do here in Michigan. Is on Fridays we sit in traffic as we head up north, although that's not probably the case today, but Memorial Weekend, we've all been there Memorial Weekend. And my point is there's this downtown area, it's like one stoplight, and there's an attorney down there, and he has his shingle hung, and it's a general practitioner, right? And the very cool thing about how this works now for everyone is you have access now to specialists or people who are experts in certain areas versus general practitioners who might just try to do a lot of everything because, you know, the needs are so random in small communities. Mm-hmm. So my point being is, you know, that those families up in that area of small town USA type environments, they have access to all the resources of the professionals who serve in certain areas like estate planning and elder law. You know, so I think that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know the exact intersection you're talking about, but I've been at that, you know, dozens of times. You know, sure. That's just kind of how those towns work, and being able to help people out anywhere is pretty fantastic.
Pat, you're from Farmville, USA, right?
I am. It has built up quite a bit. When I was a kid, I remember when Danny moved in across the field because he was the only kid my age within miles. Mm-hmm. And now there's a whole bunch of subdivisions and there's stuff over there where it's, you know, it's grown up quite a bit. But still, I mean, that there's still a whole lot of the country and a whole lot of Michigan sure. That's like that. And if we can handle it this way, what we've been doing virtual meetings and then FedExing the documents to folks, notarizing, you know, again, virtually, and then having them sent back. And that's worked really, really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the feedback that we're getting is it's almost preferred. I mean, as you can see where trends are going, right? There's Amazon. Everyone's having their groceries delivered. There's Grubhub and DoorDash. I mean, people love convenience. And this is forcing every business to become more convenient for people because they're forced to not leave their home. So people are repositioning themselves to figure out, how do I serve people who can't leave their home? But wait mm-hmm. until this is all gone and people like choose not to leave their home. It's just going to be a different part of everyone's, you know, way they conduct business. And I think it's great.
Well, yeah, and for convenience factor as well. I mean, we'll look at some of the. I mean, even when everything was up and open, we would have challenges with, well, what works on your schedule, trying to coordinate a whole family physically coming to one office all at once, or people are working and so they have to take an evening appointment or something like that. Well, what if instead of driving to the lawyer's office at 6 o'clock at night, you just went home where your spouse was, and we could do the same work without having to deal with all that. So as long as people are open to it, which this has really kind of pushed people to have to be open to it, mm-hmm. I think that's a fantastic new direction for things to be going in.
For sure. I mean, you know, I can speak from the experiences I've had so far is that I'm always of the opinion that I like family involvement in all this. I think it's very helpful that let's just go with a straightforward family situation. There's spouse, there's kids. I love when the kids are part of the planning process because they then understand everything. They know the planning objectives. They know what they need to do if something were to happen. They've met me, so if they need something from me, they can text me, call me, email me, whatever the case may be. And we're able to do that a lot easier right now. And I've had so many meetings where I'm like 6 people on the screen, and I love it. And and you know, typically we're scheduling about a week between meetings, but right now we can be like, if we were trying to get 6 people on another meeting after we've already had one, that would be like 5 weeks before we could do that, or before the stars align and we can all sit down together again. Now, because of this, because of using Zoom, we can get all the family in the room again in a couple days. And it's just, I think it makes us as planners more efficient and effective when we communicate with the entire family. And I love it.
I couldn't agree more. Also to say, another Michigan trend, almost as popular as having a cabin somewhere, is for snowbirds. So we have all these families that we work with, and as winter rolls around, it's like we've already started things, but they're like, all right, I'll be in Florida for the next 4 months. When I get back, we'll finish it up then.
How many times have you had a fall appointment that the next appointment is scheduled like this week right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny how that works. And now, like, no way, we don't need to do that. I mean,
Right.
obviously we're working with everyone else's schedule and how fast they want to, continue processes and whatever. But I mean, get down in Florida, get cozy, get on your couch, and then let's Zoom again.
For sure. I mean, because that's something that families have expressed frustration with. Like they want to get things done, but they also, it's like this is when we go. Um, so being able to just do it on those schedules, I think is fantastic, and hopefully we can continue that trend going forward.
Sure. Hey, Pat, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about some experiences we've had over the last week.
For sure.
I'll start with, because I have a couple things that are top of mind for me. For whatever reason, I've met with a lot of family businesses this week, probably three different family businesses. And, so often we get questioned about, okay, people have maybe a general understanding of how does this work for me personally if I were to pass away, appointing people. But there's a lot of questions, concerns, and just uncertainty when it comes to the business planning side of estate planning. And one tip I want to just share with everyone is, because I know some people start to dabble a little bit in like a side hustle of having a rental property, right? That seems like the first step that some people get into. Other types of income streams, those kinds of things. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people having rental properties, especially when they're rented to someone that's not a family member. Not that I would recommend anything different if it was a family member, but that then takes it one step further. That rental property should truly be in an LLC. And the reason I say that is because the protection provided for an individual for the cost of putting in place, or the investment of putting in place an LLC, it's like peanuts for protecting your personal assets from anything bad happening to, let's say there's a slip and fall on the property. And now they're suing you because everyone sues everyone for everything. Okay.
Right.
If that property is in an LLC, the liability is cut off at the value of the property. If it's in your name personally, they can go after that property and any other asset you have that's personally. And I just think it's foolish to have it in your name personally if you're renting it. It's so simple. I mean, a cost of an LLC can range from a couple $100 to, it depends, obviously. It always depends on if we need to put in place an operating agreement that shows who owns what and some other, more in-depth terms. But if it's just an individual, getting an LLC in place is peanuts compared to the liability protection that it can offer. And each family this week, every single one of them had at least one rental property in one of the family members' names personally.
Yeah, it's wild to me when you see that, because it is relatively simple to have an attorney set up an LLC.
Right.
When you own the property yourself, people will get insurance and they won't set up an LLC, so they'll be paying for this insurance. But then if somebody does have that injury, it's still them getting sued personally, and everything that they have is potentially on the line for it, because that insurance is just designed to either pay a settlement or to pay lawyers to defend you, but they're still defending you as opposed to the company. And I know people will joke about, lawyers and lawsuits and America suing each other and all this and that. It really is important to understand just how litigious America is. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but something like 90 or 95% of all the world's lawsuits originate in America. We are far and away the most litigious, sue-happy country on earth by just an enormous margin. It's over 2% of our GDP gets spent every year on lawsuits. I mean, think about that. 2% of the GDP is spent on lawsuits. I mean, that's wild. So why would you not set something up to structurally protect yourself in the event of something happening?
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell by driving around town. I mean, there's two things that are on all the billboards: fast food and lawyers, right?
Yeah, injury lawyers. Yep.
Yeah, so
somebody's paying for them.
Yeah, it's there's so many different avenues or just things that could happen if you own a business that you need to make sure are all buttoned up. I mean, for instance, who's going to take over the business? What does that look like? Are we going to have like a key man insurance policy, which you could work with a financial advisor on getting to pay someone's salary to step in? Otherwise, your business is going through probate just like your personal stuff would. And you might have a spouse controlling a business that maybe the spouse doesn't have much knowledge at all about how to run, and that's just going to go over great with the other people in the business. And I've seen some pretty interesting things, to say the least.
So I actually have a personal story on that one. One of the first offices that I opened, we were in a temporary space while the build out was going on, and it was joint owned by a couple of guys, one of whom passed away. And when he died, his son or stepson wound up inheriting it, and it caused a huge issue with the other partner, who eventually was just like, look, I can't handle this anymore. They wound up kicking all the tenants out. Fortunately, I was already ready to move to my permanent one at that point, but it was just this utter nightmare. And I wound up talking to, I'm pretty decent friends with the other guy, the other owner, and he said he will never ever again get into business with somebody who doesn't have a trust and a clear succession plan in place, because he doesn't ever want to go through something like that again. And it's like, and it's as simple in terms of organizing it as, a right of first refusal, or some way that the other partner has the first right to buy out their interest in the property. And you don't find yourself suddenly partnered with somebody who you've never met before, who's got totally different ideas, that kind of thing. So it's just, and people don't really think about it. But I thought it was fascinating when he told me he would not get into business with someone who didn't have a structured estate plan and a succession plan for their interest in that business.
Yeah, agreed. And it's always recommended to do any type of business planning, estate planning, whatever, when everyone is kind of seeing eye to eye. It's very easy to think through things and make decisions, because if you in advance say, okay, here's what's going to happen if you pass away, or if I pass away, or become incapacitated, whatever, we can work through all those things while we're still good friends, right?
Right.
But the day that we're not seeing eye to eye, someone thinks someone's being taken advantage of. Good luck to think that you're going to put in place a fair operating agreement that manages the day-to-day operations of the business.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much of this stuff that is either easy enough if you're there. So if you're there and you're competent and you're coherent, you can say, I want X, Y, and Z to happen. And when issues come up, you can say how you would want those addressed. But this comes in when you're not there anymore. Maybe you've passed away, maybe you're not competent, whatever it may be. And at that point, people are guessing. One of the worst things that I hear people say as their plan is, oh, I'm just going to have my kid figure it out. They all get on real well. They'll just figure it out. We'll just leave it all together. And it's like, maybe they will, but it's going to be an emotionally charged time. They'll have lost a parent, and people have a tendency to revert to some of those childhood things in those situations. Like, it's like, yeah, they fought like crazy when they were kids, but now they're all grown up and they're on good terms with each other. Maybe, but there's something about those big life moments that can put us back into those old worlds. And if people are trying to figure it out, then it's kind of a recipe for chaos. Where if you are overly particular and you say, look, this is exactly what's going to happen, then there's no room for disagreement. There's an awful lot you can do to head that off at the pass.
I totally agree with you. I had a family that I was working with earlier this week where they came in knowing they needed to do something, but the original plan that they thought was all good was, well, they had 4 kids, and they had 1 kid as beneficiary on all the accounts, and they said, well, we told the 1 kid what to do with everything. I'm like, okay. And the interesting thing is that could work, right? In a perfect world, it might work. But
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen money make people or have people making different decisions than you think they would have. You know,
Hmm.
money just tears apart families. That's why when they go through probate, so often families come out the other side just like not families. And with some kind of estate planning document, you can spell all that out. You don't need to leave it to chance. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of families make.
Well, and there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes along with that too, because there is the money changes things, and it doesn't need to be millions and millions of dollars either. A few, 10, 20,000 can be enough to throw a rift between people depending on their situations. But the
Yeah,
other part,
think about Pat, just think about right now. Okay, we're in the middle of this COVID-19 epidemic. There's so
Mhm.
many people. The unemployment rate is through the roof. There's so many people without anything. What if you were the beneficiary of an account that had 50,000 coming your way that you're supposed to split, but you don't have to?
Right,
Think about
and you're
that.
just doing it because you're a nice guy, right? Well,
Nice
if
guy
you
who can't put food on his table for his family.
exactly right, where the mortgages come and doing all this. Plus, that gets us into a couple other issues with that style of leave it all to the one kid and let them sort it out planning. Number one, you best hope that kid's life is going really well at the time, because
Oh,
if they get divorced, or if they have creditors, or if they have bankruptcy issues, that attaches to that inheritance when it comes to them, potentially with the divorce thing. But certainly with a bankruptcy or a medical expense, or some unforeseen issue. And now you've got someone who, even if they wanted to give the money to the siblings, they couldn't, because they have creditors, because they would owe it to them. Additionally, in that situation, if they're the beneficiary on an IRA or a 401k, that is all taxable income to that one kid, which is just wild. If you've got $500,000 in an IRA and you're like, no, no, it's cool, I'll just leave it to the one kid and they'll sort it out. That one kid is the one who has to pay all of the income tax on that and then divvy it up later, making these large personal gifts from themselves to their siblings. There is not a good reason in the world I can think of to do it that way. But not a week goes by you don't see something along those lines, where it's
mhm.
in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, there was a family about 2 weeks ago where they had done something similar. It was a blended family, and they left everything 50-50 to one child on each side. And then that child was responsible for divvying it up amongst their siblings. Good luck with that, so fortunately, we were able to sort it out and actually leave each of them what the parents really did want them to get. But what's wild on that one is an attorney had put together their documents before, and I don't know if they just went along with whatever the family was saying, or maybe they were more insistent at the time. I'm not sure. But the lawyer let them say, okay, you've got 3 kids, we'll leave it all to the oldest one of them. You've got 2 kids, leave it to the oldest one of them, and then they'll divvy it up amongst their siblings, which is just, as I say, a recipe for disaster.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. So Pat, it sounds like to me that there's a different way to do all this.
Oh, Mike, there is a different way.
Do we got
I
time?
would say
What
a
time?
better way. A better way, in fact. There are several better ways. There's not a lot of worse ways, actually. Though one of the worst ways is where the parents have like 4 kids, and so they just add them all on the deed to the house.
Oh, yeah, that always goes well.
It really
Let's
does.
do that for a minute because I know we don't have a ton of time,
Okay.
and that is such a common example. So I feel like we should touch on that because that it almost feels like rewind 30, 40 years ago. That was like the practice. Like that was estate planning for some reason. Like everyone just put all the kids' names on a house and
Yeah. So
uh,
so there are two ways that people do that, both of which have major issues. The one is, as soon as you put the kids on your house, it becomes their house just as much as yours. If
yeah,
you deed it over so that now, instead of it just being husband and wife, it's husband, wife, and 4 kids, each one of them owns it. And if they want to give it back, the parents can't take it back at that point. The kid has to deed their interest back to their parents. Like, you as the parent can't be like, oh, you know what? I want to take you off of there, Jimmy.
Right.
Jimmy has to be the one who signs a deed to take himself off. Additionally, sorry, yeah.
And I think that's a big misconception there about how that works. So often I hear from people that when they put their kid's name on an account, they put their kid's name on a house, they feel like it's a percentage interest. You know, if it's me, my spouse, and my child, we each own a third, and that's not the case. We all own 100%, which means they can go clear you out of the bank account if they so choose to do so.
Right.
The house, they own 100% of the house.
Well, and that's like I was saying before, if they're a bad actor, they can go through and they can clear you out. Or if they're a good person who got sick, went through bankruptcy, went through a divorce. I mean, this COVID thing is a really good example of that. Like, there are plenty of people out there right now who, through no fault of their own, are probably going to have to declare bankruptcy when this is over and done with. And if that kid is on your house, that's going to cause issues. If that kid is on your bank account, that's going to cause issues because,
it's accountable asset for them. It's part of their assets.
100%. And with that, it's what you've done. Typically in those situations, what people want is to give some control and access to the kids. But what they're actually doing is giving ownership. And that's where things like trusts and powers of attorney can come into play, where you can give access, the ability to get to the money, the ability to manage things, but you're not giving ownership. So you're giving them all the authority and control that you want to give them, but without exposing yourself to any of that liability.
Right.
Because you can get some real awkward situations there. And then the other way that people do it with with putting the kids on the house is with a ladybird deed. A ladybird deed being a transfer on death deed. And the thing about that is you'll have parents who will ladybird deed the house to multiple kids. That is also not a great thing. It's in more than a few situations, it is worse than doing nothing. Because a lot of people will come in and they'll say, well, I knew I had to do something, so I did this. And it's like, maybe you should have done nothing instead. Because when you ladybird deed it to all four, or just deed it outright to all four of the kids, now all four of those kids own the house. Maybe one of them has creditors or has substance abuse issues or something like that. The other three don't get to like vote by majority to kick them out. That's not how it works. They all own the home. If that kid decides to move in and squat there, there's nothing the other ones can do about it because that kid owns the house just as much as the others. And good luck selling a house with somebody who's an owner in it who won't leave, right? So eventually, maybe it'll get repossessed or foreclosed on, or the tax sale or something like that. But it's just not a good idea, because what parents typically want in that situation is to divide the value of the home equally between the kids, as opposed to now you all own it together. So that's where something like a trust works really well, because instead of each kid owning the house gets sold and each kid gets 25% of the proceeds. And if three of them are doing great and one of them has some hardships, well, it's good for two reasons. One is the 3/4 that goes to the other kids is protected for them. And then the other thing is the way that we set it up, we can leave that to the other kid in a special needs trust or some sort of protected vehicle where it couldn't be seized by creditors or lost in a divorce or something like that. So there's just a whole lot that you can do where, yeah, ladybird deeds are quick, cheap, and powerful. It is all of those things, but it's really easy to shoot yourself in the foot with something like that too.
I totally agree on that. Those are definitely some of like the beginning things that people want to start having conversations about because they've heard it worked for someone else. And I think just educating is all we can do, right? Is we can talk through different scenarios and give examples of what can happen to do things certain ways. And at the end of the day, it's on the families we work with to to pick what they want to do or not want to do. I mean,
Yep.
we're just here to help as any way that we can. Right?
Yep. And I have found the same thing. People will come in saying they want to do something, but what they're saying is not the thing that they want to accomplish. What they're saying is, I want to do a trust, a will, a deed, that sort of thing. And so the first question is always, okay, yeah, why? What is your intent? What are you hoping that will do?
What are your goals? Exactly.
What are your goals exactly? Because sometimes what they say they want is exactly what they actually do need to accomplish those goals. But sometimes it's not. People say I need a very, very clear will because I don't want to go to probate. Well, wills go to probate. That's what a will does. So if what you really want to do is make things clear and simple and avoid probate, there are other ways around that. And so it's just about education and getting to the heart of what people really want to get done.
Perfect. Pat, I think that's a good end to today's segment. It is here to wrap up the week with you. Fortunately, I think we both got a couple of tasks left on the day, but
yeah, we're not quite done.
Yeah, we're not quite done yet, right? Haven't quite made it to happy hour yet, but
right.
For sure. But thank you everyone for joining us today. Reminder on the healthcare powers and financial powers of attorney for frontline responders, 50% all estate planning services. If anyone could use some advice or would like to talk to an attorney about, how to accomplish their goals, please share this with them. We'd be happy to have a Zoom meeting with anyone, you, your family, anyone. So everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, we have on Renee from the OPC, which is the Older Persons Commission out of Rochester. We're just, keeping people aware that they're still open. They're still helping the community. And I'm really excited to have her on. So we'll be sending out some information about that coming up this Tuesday at noon.
Fantastic.
Beautiful. All right, Pat, you have a good weekend as well.
And you, Mike.